Florida is one of the bright spots in what has turned out or is turning out to be a very dismal election. And I'm going to talk about the details of the election a little more in the next segment. But I want to focus here on Florida and the kind of hero of the Florida model, which is, of course, Ron DeSantis. Now, DeSantis has shown that he has done almost everything right in Florida. He has reflected the Trumpian or MAGA spirit, but he has also effectively converted it into public policy. That is actually very important. And in fact, some of the people who are champions of DeSantis over Trump make the point that on the critical issue of COVID, DeSantis was right and Trump was wrong. Now, I can't really disagree with that because let's think about it. DeSantis made a bet, and his bet was, I'm going to keep Florida open no matter what. Had it turned out that this was the kind of pandemic where people were dropping like flies, this would have been devastating for DeSantis, and he would most certainly have not been reelected, let alone with the kind of giant margin that he won by. Trump, by contrast, kind of went along, at least went along for a while with the idea of a national shutdown. Now, this wasn't entirely in Trump's hands because Trump was dealing with governors in Democratic states that were going to shut those states down no matter what. And in that sense, Trump didn't have a choice in that matter. But it's also true that Trump was convinced that this was a kind of pressing necessity. And so Trump went in the opposite direction of DeSantis, at least for a while. And the effect of it was actually very damaging to Trump himself. Why? Because it started choking off the Trump economy. So Trump's greatest strength was that he had governed well, despite all the efforts to tie him up in knots from the left, efforts to get him. Trump showed that he knew how to run the country, which is actually by itself kind of remarkable. Here's a guy who had come out of the business sector, seemed to have no experience in politics, and was making the experts look bad. Made him look bad in foreign policy, where you seem to be able to make deals basically through a visit or a phone call. He got things done, like moving the embassy to Jerusalem that other people had just talked about, Republicans and Democrats. And you had this kind of roaring Trump economy. Unfortunately, that economy was attenuated, was shot down, and Trump himself was complicit in it. Now, having said all this, and having said that there are good conservatives, good Republicans who are trying to think about who should we back for 2024, that's not really what I want to get into right now because, first of all, it seems like we have plenty of time for that. But what I want to point out is that you see some very strange figures on the Never Trump faction or on the left really wild about DeSantis. And this is a little bit laughable because you know that these are people who don't have the Republican Party's best interests at heart. These are people who are, in a sense, using DeSantis as a truncheon to beat up Trump. And it's their best truncheon because they've come up with many truncheons before. Let's get Trump because of January 6th. He's an insurrectionist. Let's get Trump because of the dealings of the Trump Corporation. Let's get Trump because he's in bed with Russia. I mean, one preposterous narrative after another, and none of it has really worked. In other words, it has not done what it was designed to do. I mean, if you look at what the January 6th committee is designed to do, it's designed to sever Trump off from the Trump base. Liz Cheney is kind of the front person. This is really why she's the vice chair of the committee, because they want a Republican to be sort of making the indictment. It's an effort to split the Republican Party with Cheney as a willing accomplice. But none of this has really worked. And so all these people have realized our best bet to get MAGA Trumpsters to pull away from Trump is to offer them somebody else who's like Trump and say, go for this guy. So as I see it, the left strategy is as follows. Number one, use DeSantis as the weapon to politically slay Trump. Then, once that is complete, go after DeSantis. And if they can get rid of DeSantis, then basically they go, these guys have nothing. Now they're going to have to rummage around. Is it going to be Nikki Haley? Is it going to be Pompeo? So all of this tells me that the guy that the left really fears is still Trump. Trump is kind of the giant in the living room. He's the guy they don't know how to deal with. The left's view seems to be, we know how to deal with everybody else. Yeah, DeSantis is riding high. Yeah, he's done well in Florida. But at the national level, if we're looking for somebody who really scares us, who really threatens us, whom we don't quite know how to cope with, it's still Trump. So I just wanted to, in this segment, unmask and alert you to the fact that there is a strategy being deployed by the Democrats and the never-Trumpers and the left in which DeSantis is in some ways a pawn for their larger objective.